I typically like to ask, what is the problem you're solving for? Because a lot of times I think, especially with AI and a lot of the AI engineers, they find this cool product and they kind of try to reverse engineer it, and they're solving for a problem that doesn't really exist. So
even in certain softwares, like something that could be relatively simple like a CRM, a lot of times they're so over-engineered and they think, hey, it has 500 features, but that's very overwhelming to the end user that already has a lot of things they're doing in the day-to-day.
you have to be solving a problem. If a process is in place, what needs changed? And then you got to get the buy-in from the team. Once you get the buy-in from the team, the momentum starts and the adoption gets higher.
Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch. This is the spot where leaders talk about the stories, strategies, and systems that win in the building industry. We unpack how leaders and brands build their reputations and become unmistakable.
Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch, and today I'm here on the floor in Las Vegas at NHS C2C, and I'm here with my guest. Welcome to the show, Adam Gunnett.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to read your intro here, and I am excited to finally sit down with you because we have crossed paths a lot. I've seen you at a lot of shows, and you are the VP of Business Intelligence and Strategy at Busy Beaver, a 19-store home improvement chain based in Pittsburgh. And you've become one of the most talked about people in our industry as far as the retail technology space. You have won awards. You've been on the cover of Hardware Retailing magazine and nominated for CIO of the Year. And you have turned a neighborhood hardware chain into what may be the most technologically advanced home improvement operation in our country in the independent. So welcome to the show. I'm glad to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've been running past each other for the last few years. You stand out a little bit more than me, but I'm glad you noticed me. I forgot to wear pink today, but I have a little bit here. So.
I see. You got a little pink on the button there. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We've been, like you said, crossing paths, but I want to talk about technology because we both are very into AI and the tech that's out there. It's been a crazy few years with the technology that's out there on the AI side, but historically our industry has not really loved to be on the front edge of technology. How does it feel now when you're walking around, you're seeing things, every booth has something, it seems like, that has technology as far as the vendors on marketing and all of the software stuff with AI. How do you differentiate between what's signal and what's noise?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of both out there. So getting the signal through the noise is kind of the challenge. So, I typically like to ask, what is the problem you're solving for? Because a lot of times I think, especially with AI and a lot of the AI engineers, they find this cool product and they kind of try to reverse engineer it, and they're solving for a problem that doesn't really exist. So I typically ask, what's the problem you're solving for? I give them a real world example of like, how is this going to help my end users? How is this going to make them more efficient? And, what does success look like? How do you measure that?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in certain softwares, like something that could be relatively simple like a CRM, a lot of times they're so over-engineered and they think, hey, it has 500 features, but that's very overwhelming to the end user that already has a lot of things they're doing in the day-to-day. And I've seen that a lot. And implementation is harder, but adoption is almost impossible to get when it's super complicated. So how are you thinking about that when you're bringing tools in to an already busy workforce and you're changing things? Like, how are you thinking about that implementation?
Yeah, so I have found that it really has to be a change management process. So you need to, again, like I said, you have to be solving a problem. You have to be doing something that they feel is going to be making their lives easier. You have to develop that plan on, if a process is in place, what needs changed, and then you got to get the buy-in from the team. Once you get the buy-in from the team, the momentum starts and the adoption gets higher. So it's very important that you're solving an actual problem to get that adoption rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Making someone's life easier is worth a little tiny bit of the change for sure. Well, I want to talk about your history. So you actually came to Busy Beaver in 2015. You were an entry-level IT tech. You had no hardware retail
Nope.
experience at all. And you actually had to implement an entirely new point of sale system within the first 6 months of being there. So I guess they threw you into the deep end pretty fast. What did that experience teach you? And how did you figure out these things when maybe you were in a little bit over your skis?
Yeah, so not to plagiarize you, because I actually kind of had some of these thoughts in my head that you don't have the luxury of being ready.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had an interesting start to my career. My first day was at the company golf outing. Easy as pie, great.
You're like, this is going to be
This could
awesome.
be awesome. The second day at that time, our email system crashed.
Oh, man.
And the person I was working for, did not really have the knowledge of what was all involved. So I kind of had to realize sometimes you just got to jump right in.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought I'd be doing. So when it came into that, PLS implementation and kind of hitting the ground running, I just had to kind of go with the punches. It was a listening exercises too I had to involve operations, merchandising, finance, and kind of learn, how they use the existing system and how they were going to use the upcoming system. So I very quickly kind of had to learn as best I could the processes to get that system, ready to go. And, one of the other things that I found was that, you can't train, work ethic. So I knew that this was a pivotal make or break project. There was no promises, no anything that, hey, if you do this, that will happen. But I kind of believed that I wanted it to be successful, and I knew that it wasn't going to be done in 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in a 90-day period. So I had to put in some long days, had to learn a lot about the business, but it ended up working out well for the company and ended up working out well for me.
I like what you said about not being able to train work ethic. Ben and I, my husband, talk about that a lot with our team and obviously in teams that I've worked in before. I think that's one of the things, that and curiosity are the two things that are the most important, because you'll figure it out and you won't stop until you do. How do you see that in people, and why has that been so important to you in your career as you've progressed?
When it comes to curiosity, a lot of times in an interview, I'll ask people, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? And, they'll start talking about it. And I had one gentleman who was talking about how he liked working on his motorcycle. And then I asked him, well, how did you learn about that? And he's like, well, I was just curious. I went on, YouTube, I saw these videos. So that told me that he was, a curious mind, a self-starter. And then I'm like, well, what if you can't find it on there? And then he started naming examples of, outside resources. And it became very apparent he was self-sufficient. He was a problem solver. He had the work ethic. So, unusual questions like that, thinking outside the box, are kind of how you determine whether someone's could be a hard worker. And then sometimes, unfortunately, you can't really tell until it's actually live in practice. So someone can be great in an interview, great on resume, but actually seeing what they do hands-on is sometimes how you have to, battle test it.
Implementation on software, I think, can be one of those stressful things, because you're possibly going to lose a lot of revenue or data or whatever it ends up. The stakes are really high. How do you handle high stress projects like that? And even with your team, how do you help them handle those high stress projects?
Yeah, so you really just have to, stay calm. I have found that, getting stressed and worked up about something doesn't really help you. It doesn't help those around you. So staying consistent, staying confident, and when you need help, reaching out. I can be, being a self-taught type of person. I sometimes, like to figure things out on my own, and that is something that I continue to work on, but asking for help. So when you're going through like an implementation like that, that's something where hopefully the vendor you're working with is a partner and they're going to help you on that. Depending on the industry or the space, asking for help from others. There's third parties out there, there's communities, but asking for help and staying calm, I would say, are the two keys.
I love that. I want to transition a little bit and talk about technology and AI and kind of how you're using it today. So you, I'm sure, get pitched a lot with new technologies. I know I get messages every day, like I don't even have a store and I get messages of, hey, can you look at my new software, look at my new technology? How do you figure out what is worth doing? You talked about the problem solving, but how do you test things? Like, what's the go-to-market strategy on new softwares that maybe aren't full-on built out? I know you have some people that we actually have met here and talked about how do you evaluate a new technology to figure out if it really is. Once you say, yeah, the problem you're solving is great, how do you know if it's really what it says it is in testing it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times the terms you'll hear are proof of concept, trial period, pilot. The term that I like to use, and it's something that I stole from someone that, another colleague in another sector of retail, was really proof of technology. Someone can show you a product, show you this. The concept is pretty simple. You understand the concept, so you really don't have to prove the concept. You prove the concept to be in your sales pitch. But I need to prove that the technology is actually going to work and the technology is going to work for me. So in our space, point of sale can be very diverse and very specific to a company. So I want to do a proof of technology, and at minimum that needs to be 30 days. A lot of vendors, especially if they're a newer company, they're willing to do a 90-day proof of technology, and that really allows you to kick the tires, get the end users that are using it day to day to really see that it's actually living up to what you expect.
Yeah. All right, so things can go really great sometimes, but sometimes they can go really not so great. So was there something, a technology, even in your personal life, that maybe looked good on paper and you thought was going to be great, but ended up not being so great?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's been more than one. I won't name any names, but as in your previous session that I got to see here at the show, failure can be kind of our biggest teacher. And one of the technologies was really kind of around supply chain and inventory and things like that. And we did not do a proof of concept or proof of technology. And it worked great for other retailers, but it did not work for us, and part of that, was maybe we weren't ready for the change management that was involved, because it would have fundamentally changed our business to execute the way they wanted us to execute. And, there was another e-commerce solution, and I haven't heard it's uncommon for people to switch e-commerce platforms, so I don't have to be ashamed of that. But, I was really excited for this one e-commerce platform, and it didn't pan out, but, it was just a learning lesson that, hey, I really want to evaluate these things and do proof of technologies and have exit clauses, so...
Well, even in our small business, we've changed project management softwares a few times, and we've changed CRM several times. And I think as your business grows and innovates as well, and as the technology changes, sometimes you just have to pivot, and there's no, like you said, no shame in that, but you do learn a lot about what you don't need and maybe about what's not important and then what is. I love that story because it resonates with me. Every time I'm like, tell my team, hey guys, we found this thing and we think we're going to change, but I've gotten actually now, I've had some feedback this week from one of my team members on something, and we were trying to do something with two softwares. One was doing our marketing, one was doing like our sales stuff on the CRM. And she actually brought it to me and said, hey, I think we should cancel this and we should just go straight up all this. And I was like, awesome. I wanted you to bring it up because you were used to using both, and I wanted you to be the one to say this makes sense. So I like it when people bring me the idea, and it's not always me having to be the bad guy. I want to ask about some of the pivotal things that you think, especially retailers and hardware, but in general, people maybe should be paying attention to. What are some of the tools that you love?
Just the general AI tools. So whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gronk, I think from a personal perspective, if, you're not using those, just using them as, something to throw ideas off of. I think actually you were one that gave a presentation about talking to, bouncing marketing ideas off of a tool like that. And that was, not something that I had thought of. I originally kind of started using it to help with some scripting and coding was my original thing. So just adapting that. And there's a lot of great, AI technologies out there. We're using one, and you just met the gentleman. Fast Query is a great technology specifically for the independent hardware. We have one called Zipline, which is more of a task management and communication and learning platform. And again, these tools empower our front-end employees. And at the end of the day, if our front-end employees aren't helping customers, they're not making sales, then we're not in business. So we're not, necessarily looking for the cool tools for us at the headquarters or store support office. We want to empower frontline employees.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for those tips. If you had to say a favorite, like what is your favorite large language? Have you used Claude Code?
I have not.
You gotta check it out.
I have subscribed to it. I have it set up, but I have not started using it yet.
The ability on the HTML writing and the script writing with that it's exponentially better than the other ones I've used in my team, and I use it a lot. So you've got to check it out. Let me know what you think when you check it out. I want to hear.
Like I said, I have made it a mission to all the popular ones, get subscribed and set up to them. I just have been so busy traveling, I haven't done it. But
it's hard to keep up. I mean, it's every day.
There's always new ones.
I know, it's crazy. But that one I think you would like since you do so much coding. Well, I want to talk about your team. So you've said that your associates are your biggest competitive advantage over the big boxes. How does technology serve them rather than replace them? And I hear a lot with people that AI is going to replace people. I think a lot of independents are really scared of that. So how do you think that technology can help serve your biggest competitive advantage and people can embrace it instead of being scared of it?
Yeah, so when I hear about independence, I think about, what we do. We position ourselves as being the neighborhood home improvement store. We talk about customer service, and, a lot of the people you hear here today, they talk about offering that legendary customer service. I think about, what are the tasks that my employees need to do, but it takes away from them being able to help customers. So whether it has to do with inventory or changing price labels. So, we have a few stores that have ESLs.
Yeah.
That's the technology that takes the task away from our employees. But, we didn't have a dedicated person for doing price changes. We don't have a dedicated person for cycle counts, but yet that's something that our employees don't really enjoy doing. So by a result of the technology, we've kind of improved our culture because they can help customers, because a lot of them, that's what they want to do. We have some retirees that worked a full career, and now they're just working at our stores because they like talking to people. They like helping people with problems. So those are the technologies we look towards. And again, some of these AI technologies, they kind of level up your employees. They make them all, we have this gentleman named Bruce that kind of can answer any question, whether it's paint, electrical, plumbing. He knows every department in the store. And we also have, part-time high school students that are working that know even less than me, which, yes, it is possible. Being in this space, you think I would know more about hardware, but I still struggle. But we have an app now that can make, that high school student essentially a Bruce, and that's just using AI, and it's just a great tool.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody needs a Bruce, and that's the only way I've found to get it, is to do it with technology. And it's as more people like Bruce retire, that knowledge doesn't just transfer. And so I think if we can figure out a way to get Bruce's brain into that and really replicate it, that's where the magic happens. Well, I want to ask you some lightning round questions.
Okay.
So if there's one technology today that I told you, like, absolutely you could keep that one thing, that's the only one you could keep, what would you keep?
Fast Query.
Okay. Quite the testimonial there. All right. What's the biggest tech mistake that most independent retailers are making today?
That technology is a silver bullet that solves all problems.
There's a saying I like, no silver bullets, only golden BBs.
Yes.
It's like one little tiny type at the time. All right, fill in the blank. The word grit means blank to me.
Resilience.
Okay. And the last closing question, this is not a lightning round one, just the last question for you. What is the one thing that you wish every independent retailer in the industry world would do in the next 90 days when it comes to technology? Just one thing.
To realize that, if they think they're behind, they're not, because everyone's behind with AI. It changes so quickly. So they just need to start doing something today.
And I really appreciate you joining me today on the Grit Blueprint podcast. And I can't wait to just keep up with you and see what you continue to do in our industry. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you at a trade show nearby soon. So thank you for joining us on this episode, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Grit Blueprint podcast. If this episode helped you think a little differently about how to show up, share it with someone in your building world who needs it. If you're ready to turn visibility into growth, then head to gritblueprint.com to learn more and book a call to talk to us about your growth strategy. Until next time, stay unmistakable.